Hello, welcome. My colleague and I are giving a presentation today called The Good, the Bad, and the Anatomically Incorrect. This is a presentation that we are also set to make in a couple weeks at Denver Fan Expo. So we appreciate you guys letting us try it out with you. I am Martha MacMillan. I'm in the Zoology Prep Lab with Andy. And
I am Cameron Pittman, and I am the Assistant Collection Manager of Zoology with Andy.
All right, so to kick things off, what we're doing today is we're talking about human hybrids in mythology and pop culture and how they could potentially actually work or not if they were somehow real. So we're going to kick it off with Angel from X-Men, who has natural wings. We were initially going to do Hawkman, and then in starting research, I am not a super comic book nerd, so I didn't know. Hawkman actually has like a suit that he puts on that sprouts the wings. So we needed somebody that actually has wings attached to their body. And because he's a mutant, you know, they say, well, the wings have a really flexible skeleton and possess superhuman strength, and his bones are hollow, his body processes food faster. They've like covered all the bases of why this wouldn't actually physiologically work. So they've already covered all of that. So, but if we look at an actual human skeleton, here's what I want you guys to do for me real quick. What we're going to talk about first. Hold your arms out. Give yourself a big hug. Now, what you can feel sticking out of the back of your back, those are your scapula. Those are these, all right? With a lot of these guys, and from the pictures that I've seen of Angel, they just tack wings onto those. Like, they can just be, like, added, and that's fine. There's not an arm bone on this one, but if you notice, you've got your clavicle, scapula, and then your humerus. And those are all really important bones in making your arms work. So if we were to have wings, we would need another set of bones. So this represents a second scapula, which we can talk about evolutionary, whatever. A whole second set of bones would be required for these. So a second scapula that would need to be a whole lot longer and thinner than a human one, because a human one is just meant to hold up this. A bird's scapula is meant to be an anchor on the back for the muscles, and so if it's as small as our scapula is, there wouldn't be nearly enough anchor space. Additionally, we would need to have a much larger and flatter sternum that would need to go, that would need to go, like your sternum ends right here. It would need to go down all the way to the base of your ribs to have support from all of your ribs, and it would need to widen out, not even touching the keel that birds have that stick out from their chest. At bare minimum, it would need to be flatter and wider. And then at least one extra bone, which would probably have to wrap up and over your existing shoulder. That would be kind of like the bird's furcula or wishbone, would also be necessary. And then that would allow space for additional muscles to go across the side of your rib cage between that scapula and the sternum, and then down the front of your rib cage to allow potentially for a whole other humerus to exist there to be able to move. Not likely, all right? The other big thing, I should have started with this. The most fundamental thing is that if you think about birds look like they're standing upright like we are, but they're actually standing like this compared to how humans stand. And their ribs, instead of, ours are kind of flat this direction, theirs are flat this direction. So it's a lot easier for the bones and muscles to kind of wrap around their shoulder area to get to connection points on both the front and the back to support their wings. That's really hard with the way that human rib cages are set up. And the fundamental issue with that is this bottom point, we would never be able to take off from standing. There would have to be something where we would go and kind of get a running leap and be able to spread wings and jump in the air. So yeah, a whole other set of bones in the shoulder area would be needed to support the wings because our arms already have all of that occupied, and it wouldn't work to just tack on. Wouldn't be able to use our arms. The muscles of the ribs are not enough to support flight. We need a larger sternum and more muscles there. We wouldn't be able to take off from standing. And we haven't even touched on the idea of how heavy we are, how we don't have tails to help navigate any of that business. This is just looking at the girdle area and how wings would need to be attached there.
Hello? You can still hear me? Okay, great. So we now want to talk about ape sapien. He is described as a amphibious ictosapien, which kind of means three things all in one, but you only see kind of the two abilities themselves. Of course, you know, fish-like, amphibious-like, it's kind of a mixture of all that, but we're trying to figure it out how this can work in real time. So actually it depends on his origin. So from the comic books to the movies, there's actually different origins for each of these. And so that means that, you know, one of them is that he was a fish creature that was, you know, there's a fish god that kind of rained down his fish-like abilities, or there's an amphibious quality to that god, or there's a jellyfish god to that. So it's kind of all confusing. And what happens is that, you know, that's going to dictate what kind of changes his human physiology to kind of mask all of these different supernatural abilities that he gains. So what I think about is that when we talk about a fish, first off, I want everybody to take in a big deep breath with me. Perfect. You guys use about 6 sets of muscles to do that. So that means that you guys use your diaphragm, you use your intercostal muscles that are connected to your ribs, and of course your lungs and your esophagus and your mouth are all working together to give you that breath. To do what? To take in oxygen. That's what we need to breathe, and that's what he needs to breathe as well. With fish, it's a little different. With fish, they're bringing water through their mouth and then through their operculum with pretty much like the gills, and they're kind of constantly doing that to circle it in. And that's going to be what he uses in this, if you can see this in the corner, this kind of mechanism is kind of supposed to simulate that. But I don't think that can work because, of course, his mouth is still yapping and all that kind of stuff. So what I think is that, you know, talking about the amphibious or jellyfish-like quality, we're just using his skin in that kind of property, where his skin's going to be the one that's breathing in that air through hopefully the moisture that he can have around him. But of course, he doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes he likes to wear a detective outfit when he's like out in the field so he can seem human-like, but we can spot him from a mile away. And again, so, you know, you can kind of see his wetsuit, but it's not really a wetsuit because he's already like a fish. So like, what's the point of this? But so the main takeaway is that no matter the origin, the forms of the sapien is going to be what means for his absorption of oxygen. He might not require a diaphragm. He might not even require ribs in that sense. It just depends on where you look at it. He does require a better breathing mechanism because the one before was a little bit janky. So I think it's either going to be SpongeBob-like, where it's just like kind of a fish bubble above his head, or Dune-like, where it's just like a reverse of like the dry suit, where it like kind of takes in moisture, one that kind of adds moisture into his body across his entire form. And now we're going to, I think our favorite of this is the centaurs. So with centaurs, we see them in a lot of media, from, you know, Percy Jackson to Narnia, which this guy is from, Aureus, I think is his name. And so that's kind of a really cool one that I think plays on 2 parts, where you have really just like a whole animal and a whole human and just cutting it in half and then putting it together. That's what this guy is. But how is this going to work? So Martha, would you like to? Oh, sure. And this one's also a cool one. So this is actually a real specimen that was found and excavated that was in the Madison Art Center, and you can kind of see some problems with it, but we're going to get into that just in a second. Here you go.
All right, so this dude was buried this way with a horse body and a human torso. And most depictions of centaurs, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see where they've taken a horse skeleton and they stop it right here, and you see a human body and they stop it right here, and they put it together, and this is what you get. There's one huge issue to this. I mean, several. But the biggest one that I see is if you all hit yourself like right here, the base of your abdomen, there's bone there, right? You got your hip points right here. You're sitting on another pair of hip points. All of your abdominal muscles right here, everything there is all supported, is all attached to, or needs your hips to support it. If you didn't have a bone here, it would be really, really hard to stand upright because all of these abdominal muscles either have an origin or an insertion on these hips somewhere. So the idea that this creature would be able to be upright like this, much less wear armor and all kinds of stuff, is crazy. So what we propose is that it would have to have a hip still in there. Now, why would you need to evolve two separate pelvises? That's a whole other discussion. But it would need to be something as big as kind of what our hips are like now, and as wide. We're set up to stand upright. If we're still in this upright position, it would still need to be kind of that wider stance, hips. But in theory, you could replace the sacrum with just larger vertebrae coming through the back, and then that could articulate with the horse vertebrae, and that could work together, and then you could still use this limb, in theory. The other big piece, the other big thing that I hear a lot when people talk about centaurs is where would there be two stomachs? Would there be two hearts? Would there be two sets of lungs? My theory, my proposal, is that for an animal this big, the heart would need to be larger even than a horse's heart. So the upper torso would need to be all lungs and heart. It would need to be super extra big. There probably would even need to be a larger rib cage relative to a normal human. And that would all the circulatory stuff would be up there. In the lower torso, that's where all of the GI stuff would be. So the stomach, the intestines, and all of that. And there'd be even more room for that without the heart and lungs there, which would be good because this creature would probably need to eat nonstop to support a body like this. So yeah. Oh, main takeaways for the centaur. Pelvis-like structure would need to be in there to support the human torso. A huge body size would require a larger heart and larger lungs, and then splitting up the circulatory system and the GI system. Because if there's one thing that evolution does really well, it's getting rid of redundancies. So you wouldn't ever, I'm going to regret saying this, you wouldn't ever see an animal with like two full sets of GI equipment, right? I say that, and now I've thought of ruminants that have 4 chambers. They're hard. That's not the same thing. But yeah, so I mean, the idea that it would be like a full, human torso with all of its parts, and a full horse with all of its parts, that wouldn't ever happen. All right, we have specimens to share. I believe that's everything.
Yeah, we just want to leave you with like the understanding of like, what we see in sci-fi, what we see in fantasy kind of is a great reflection of what kind of we see in the natural world. So there's always going to be that inspiration for something like that, and then how we can see that play into the real world. So that's kind of what spurred us on this moment, but we have to give a shout out to the DRL for really giving us this prompt for this question, and then kind of giving us the fire to ignite this kind of passion into something cool as this, to ask about that. So of course, yeah, come up and see the specimens and ask us about how they might work with some of the specimens we have up here. And of course, we'll have some time for questions. So thank you. Don't do it, Martha. Oh, I'm just kidding. Throw it, go ahead, throw it. Do it.
I'm gonna let
Andy's
I'm
right
gonna
there,
let Paula
so.
throw it.
Ready?
Oh.
Could the pelvis replace the shoulder girdle in the centaur?
I thought about that a little bit. I mean, that's a possibility for sure. It could just be all kind of one large thing. The way that weight distribution is different between the forelimb of an animal and the hind limb of an animal, I don't think that it would work very well. The animal would have a really hard time being very mobile. They'd end up being a lot more like, I mean, in my mind, I would picture him kind of trundling around like a hippo, and less like a graceful horse. But again, talking about non-redundancies in nature, like that would probably be a lot more likely of a thing to happen than to have a whole separate pelvis-like structure attached to the vertebrae.
The human pelvis and the horse pectoral girdle ultimately fuse because they're holding up so much weight. What are we calling this new extremely specialized structure?
I think I got it.
What?
A shelvis.
What were some of the other creatures you guys wanted to cover but didn't have time to? Anything on the list or anything that was, you guys liked a lot?
That's a great question.
That's a great
I
question.
think a big one is mermaid. That's
Yeah.
also one that you think of a lot. There's the chimeras, or the sphinx is a good one, which kind of plays into the centaur. So I think if we wanted to do a part 2 electric boogaloo version of this, that's where we're gonna go.
I'm surprised that you didn't add any Dungeons and Dragons monsters and/or races like the Aarakocra or owlbear.
Centaurs and Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay, all right.
I got you.
I'll take it.
That's good to look to expand this though.
Oh, we have to go to Jeff after this.
So with like Angel from the X-Men, do you think that the keel that bird sternums have would be necessary for them to fly, or could you have it flat?
I've gone both directions in my head with this. Because of how upright humans are, I feel like we could probably, again, this is all very theoretical stuff, but I feel like we could get away with just having a lot more flat layers wrapping around the body, but it would need a very large insertion point on that bone. It would probably need to stick out at least a little bit, but part of the reason that bird keels are so pronounced is because of their stance like this instead of like this. So yeah, I think we could get away with not having a giant like thing sticking out of our chests, just because the way that we stand is so much different.
Have you seen Chicken Man from Family Guy? That's pretty much what we're thinking if that's happening.
Good example.
Jeff?
So horses have reduced clavicles.
Mm-hmm.
All cursorial animals do that. So yeah, there'd be too much in the way for running. But did you, I don't know, I'm sorry, I was so stunned by it. Well, did you think about the other systems besides skeleton, like digestive
So
elimination?
yes, our time slot at Fan Expo is 30 minutes. So I definitely started going down all these rabbit holes, and Cameron was like, "Dude, we're just gonna focus on like." What?
We'll move right along, Jeff.
But yeah, I don't know. I've definitely sat there and pondered all of the different ramifications of some of these things for sure.
So with Angel, would he be flying with his legs hanging down towards the earth all the time, or would he need more to like fly in that, Superman style, body extended?
So, went too far. So pretty much everything that I've seen, like from the movie, is he's flying like that, presumably because he's in a harness. And if you,
It's like that would kill my abs to like
Right?
hold it.
yeah, if you've ever been in a harness like that, like if you don't hold your legs up, you're gonna like fly. But that's part of the concern that of if this would work physiologically, because if you're holding your feet like that stable and you don't have a tail, you're gonna flap your wings and flip over. Like it's not gonna work. But that's a big question. And you see the comic book illustrators, and they're like in the air, like, and it's like, how are they actually stabilizing themselves with their legs doing all of these gymnastics? So
Can you do that pose again?
no.
Okay. This is so many questions.
Still looking at Angel, what sort of precautions would he need to take with hollow bones?
Right. A lot of them, because human bodies are heavy. Mammal bodies are heavy. Like, just walking around, he would probably be really susceptible to broken bones. Now, again, they say his body compensates for it because he's a mutant, but if you think about people that there's a disease called brittle bone disease, and people can break their femurs just sitting down too hard. Like it would be really not physiologically feasible for us to have hollow bones. And it probably wouldn't even decrease the weight enough for us to actually be able to fly. Like if you think about the ratios of bird weight to bird wingspan, Jeff and I were actually just talking about this. Like the heaviest birds are like 25 to 30 pounds maybe these days, and they've got wingspans of like 6 feet. So, yeah.
You kind of just started answering it, but like how tight to the body would they be able to get their wings? Like how small could they make that? You know what I mean? Like when their wings are folded in, how low profile can they get?
So you see a lot of them where, the depictions of them where they fold their wings down and they're like nice tucked around their shoulders. With the length that just that first humerus like bone would have to be, if they folded their wings in, their wings would be up above their heads like this.
Drag queen style.
Drag queen, yeah. Because like putting wings out this way would not probably be possible because, like I said, all those muscles would have to wrap around here. So it's really going to be hard to move your wings back like that. You'd pull stuff. So they would really probably be flat against the back like this all the time. Yeah. It'd be really tricky to get in the car. But, I mean, you'd have wings, so, it might not. Unless the weather's bad. Yeah.
So another question with Angel again. The X-Men fight a lot. If he punched someone, would he just break all of his arm bones?
So I don't know about his arm bones, but I read part of it is that he is capable of hitting somebody with his wings and smashing them through a wall. So, yeah. I agree with that scoff. But yeah, if he had hollow bones, if he punched anything, he would destroy his arm.
Regarding the centaur, how much back pain does the human part have?
How much back pain?
Back pain. A lot?
A lot.
That sounds miserable.
Would he have back pain?
Well, I mean, I think, the horse side might be fine, but like, I mean, think about how nice it is sometimes to be able to stretch your back this way. Or, I think the human side would have a relatively low range of movement to be able to really work those vertebrae out. So, being stuck kind of like this with these big set of legs, I don't know. I don't know how you would sleep. That would be really, really uncomfortable.
Okay, very important question. If you could be a human-animal hybrid, what would you choose?
I would totally have wings. As much as I scoff, as little as I think it's actually possible, I would love to have wings. It'd be so cool.
I think I would go for the centaur. I think I would be a centaur. It'd be wildly, inefficient and painful, but I think I would go with the centaur.
Just to prepare you for Fan Expo. In X Factor number 40, Angel's wings are surgically removed and replaced with metal wings. How would that work?
I got this.
Oh, perfect.
Sorry. What was the question? And that's my answer. That's my answer.
During the Age of Apocalypse, Apocalypse removes Angel's wings and replaces them with metal wings. How does that work?
Wow. I've seen that movie twice, so let's go. Martha, you can take it back, actually.
So, does he put any like metal plating in his back?
No.
No, they're just metal wings stuck
Yeah.
to his body. I don't know. Unless there's some jet engines that were added or something along those lines, I don't know how that would work. Maybe.
Hey, do we actually agree that that movie was good? If not, we don't need to answer this question.
I saw that when I was looking into them, and it's like, but like I said, if there's no means of propulsion, how does that work? Like you just have fancy, like a costume.
They're decorative.
They're
Somebody said
decorative.
it.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I just want to interrupt and say I want to see this many questions when we have less erudite lectures. It would be nice. And I'm very impressed it took that long, that many questions to stump them.
Okay, did you think about what animal should be hybridized with humans? What would be your choice for hybridization?
That's a great question. I think we need to look through more of the invertebrate side of things. I think that we need to think about like the exoskeleton kind of route where we kind of keep the ligaments, but we kind of can move and have armor around at all times. That would be really cool. We wouldn't be able to be stepped on because we're still the biggest thing around. And that would just kind of mean that we get to protect our soft insides a little bit more.
I think that's obvious.
You're welcome, Paula. You know.
Appreciate it.
I feel like we did touch on this when we were deciding which ones we wanted to cover, but I don't remember what we said. I think that mermaids are still the most likely from any kind of developmental standpoint because it just would be a lot easier to ditch the legs and grow out a longer tail than any of this.
Okay, I need to know in 30 seconds or less, can you explain the skull of a Gorgon? Medusa?
Okay. I haven't looked into this, and now I feel like I should. What I need to understand about that is, are the snakes actually like part of her skull, or are they living on her skin?
I guess that's up to you right now.
Yeah. I've always thought that they were like a symbiont, like creatures that are like embedded in her soft tissue and living on her skin and not actually part of her skull. But like I said, I haven't looked into that one. I should do more research on my cryptids.
That'll be next year's talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other question?
Justin?
I saw another hand. There you go.
So for Mr. Abe Fishman,
Close enough.
If we're assuming that he's part fish, what types of structures would he need to be able to breathe through that?
Yeah, I mean, he's still going to have, I guess, a set of gills. I should have chosen a picture without this apparatus that he uses sometimes, but he would still have his gills set. And that's kind of the problem is that he's amphibious, but also like fish-like. So it's like the different parts of that where amphibians, they do have gills when they're in their larval stages, but with this one, he's a grown adult, maybe. So for this, like, he doesn't need air sac or like the thing to like use for swimming per se, because he's using mechanical motion. He's using his arms and legs. So I think he doesn't need his gills in this sense. If he doesn't have that, or he doesn't need lungs, then he doesn't need a rib cage because that's mostly structural in this case for fish and himself. So it'd be really interesting to dissect him at one day. Just waiting for it to die at the zoo.
Just waiting for it to die at the zoo.
Since you've got it up, have you guys given any thought to Abe sapiens, what physiologically would allow him to communicate with other marine life?
I think that's a great question because he can talk to fish. He can't talk. Well, he can't talk to mammals. I don't think.
No, I think it's just
it's just fish. So I think it's just going to be telekinesis or not telepathy. Nope. Yeah, telepathy. So it's just brain power. Because really, he's talking to us and he's like going over like, I want a fish fillet kind of thing over on the other side.
Other questions?
Since you brought it up, what would you need physiologically to use telepathy?
What? A really cool brain, maybe like a brain that has some cool, circuitry, wiry. I don't know. There's nothing really. I don't think. Martha, do you want to take that one?
So there's, the theory is that if mammals, if humans actually used more of our brains, we'd be able to do a lot more cool stuff.
The Lucy effect.
Right.
There you go. That would be it. He's just using a little bit more brain power than us.
Bluetooth is plugged in.
Oh, we have more?
You brought it up like a little bit ago about like crossing invertebrates. One of the things I was thinking of when I heard about this talk was I don't know, I forget the race. I don't know if they're called arachne. It's just the human torso on a spider body. How would you guys even attack something like that, or even just invertebrates in general? Also like lamias, so like snake torso or human torso, snake body. So just like pick whatever.
This has been the perfect place to practice this talk because, oh my gosh, these questions are amazing. That's an amazing question. I think it's going to be similar in effect to the centaur, where you're kind of like having a support structure underneath with a shelvis of some sort. But with invertebrates, it's going to be tougher because you're going to have to mix the internal structure of them. So like, the way that they produce fluids and have their innards kind of work is going to be different than the human part. So that's going to be a huge issue down the road. But of course, that's going to lead that we're writing all these down in our heads. I mean, for like next time, like writing down all the hybrids that we need to do to please all of you. There's no way.
I have some tips.
Oh.
So in early embryonic stages, when the limb buds for the lower limbs don't divide, you can actually have mermaid syndrome, sirenomelia. So there are humans that have that feature. You should start there and work your way back.
Will do. Thank you.
That's a good place to look for is in developmental.
Now we're going to ontogeny. So this is
yeah.
I just want to compliment the what's the name of the arachno person?
I forget the name. I think I've always heard they were called arachnes.
Well, it doesn't matter. I don't want to crush anyone's dream, but in physics, we learn that a spider of that size would be impossible physically to happen because of the lack of supporting structures and the hydraulic system that keeps a spider up. Is impossible to sustain itself in the current gravity system that we have. So, I'm sorry.
So it would have to be.
Do not apologize for correcting us. We love MacMillan, and so that's always going to be great. I think we're going to have to cut it there, right?
Well, I mean, you gave a really short lecture, so I don't really care.
Oh yeah, we can add more. That's
we have a couple more questions, and then we'll call it a day.
Would Mothman be a more practical flight solution for humanoid flight?
No, because butterfly, moth, Lepidoptera wings are definitely not going to work at that size unless they are more structurally sound, I guess, in that way. Because they're just going to fall off when you try to lift off. So that'll be harder, but we'll look into Mothman too. I got you.
All right, so kind of going off of that, what if they were bat wings, since that's more mammalian already?
So I really feel like after doing this deep of a dive into this, that I I don't feel like if somehow hominids grew wings that they would be feathered. I think that they are a lot more likely to be something more like a bat wing or something like that. Partly too because thinking about what a bird wing looks like, a bird wing is an analog for our forelimb, right? They've got a humerus, a tibia, and fibula, like a fused metacarpal, and then they actually have little phalanges that are all fused together in there. And like I said, redundancy is not, your typical. So like there's no way or there's no reason for, unless we didn't have forelimbs like birds, for that same structure to be inside of a wing attached to a human. So it would probably be more just straight long bones and end up looking a little bit more like a bat wing. Not exactly like a bat wing because those are their forelimbs as well. And their phalanges are extra long. But I think that's what it would end up looking a lot more like.
I think we should, oh, really?
Let it ride. Let it ride. Yeah, go ahead.
So this sounds like a oxygen situation, and so I would look in the paleontological record for something like in Mortal Kombat. I forgot his name, but with the 2 arms, or the 4 arms,
With the 4
because
arms.
once you have 4 arms, now you can mutate the second set of arms.
Right. Then you're not.
So
Then you're
I
not
think
being
paleo
redundant.
needs to get involved with this.
Call Tyler.
I think we should probably leave it there.
Yes, but before we go, if you guys actually want to see our talk in real time, it's going to be July 5th at the Fan Expo at one of the pop-up classrooms at 11 a.m. So if you guys do want to make it out for that, that will be where we are for the next time. And we have a lot of more things to think about now after this first talk. So thank you guys very much for attending.
So yeah.